I just remember him giving me his helmet and putting on his flotation on me. And all I could hear the pilots were saying, "Okay, we're ready," kind of thing. And then they said, "Rescue swimmers down, clear the flight deck." And I just passed out at that moment.
Welcome to the Calm in the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation Rescue Swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Welcome to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. I am super pumped to have my good friend Larry Grossman on the show. Welcome, Larry.
Well, thank you, Brian, for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Oh, you're too kind, man. I'm so pumped. Like your life is, I don't know, it's like Mission Impossible. Like seeing where you're going and stuff. I mean, they should make a movie just on your character, and we'll talk about all of that. But just your military experience alone is just, it's amazing. Like we were talking earlier, like you're leaving the Pentagon and you're driving home. You're like, hey, just want to catch up or whatever. Just have a conversation, and it's like we're mapping this crazy. I don't know, these intervals of where we were overlapping and had no idea.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll kind of get into that as well. But for people that don't know you, why don't you just give us a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up and whatever you want to say.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. So I was born in the Bronx, New York, moved to Brooklyn, so I consider myself more of a New Yorker than anything. Moved to Miami Beach when I was about 10, 11 years old. We used to visit my grandmother, and it was nice to go in there. It was just beautiful going from New York to Miami Beach and being on the beach. Mm-hmm. And that's where me and my brothers grew up, where we call home, where we felt comfortable. And one day my mom said, "We're not going back." This was 1975, 1976. And we were devastated because all of our friends were in New York City, in Brooklyn. And my mom just said, "We're not going back." And then we made the best of it. I made some great friends that today I'm still in touch with. And it's just an honor and pleasure to work with people from that time period, to still see them, how they grow up. And how I saw them in elementary school, and we were friends in junior high and high school. And I joined the Navy right out of high school. I went with my friend, my buddy named Wayne. He was joining the Navy. He convinced me. He said, "Hey, it's the best thing for us." And we went under what they call the buddy program, where you get your A school together and where you go into boot camp together. And it didn't work out that way. He went to one boot camp. He went to Great Lakes, and I went to Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
And then
they lied to you?
Yeah. Oh, no. They didn't lie. And then I wound up going to the school. And then in boot camp, they basically said, they do like a swim test, and wherever the rating was short of. Luckily, I mean, they were just short of rescue swimmers. Mm-hmm. So they just said, "Hey, does anybody want to be a rescue swimmer?" Had no idea what that was. I was also a lifeguard at the Jewish Community Center. So it was fun being a lifeguard there. Mm-hmm. And then I said, "Yeah, well, I could swim." And so I did the swim test. And next thing you know, I was going to be an AW, which obviously had no idea what that was, anti-submarine mm-hmm. warfare. And then the rest is history. I went to Aircrew School in 1986, Rescue Swimmer School, immediately following that. Back then, it was that's how we did it. And then I went to A School in Millington, Tennessee. My first squadron was HS-7 out of Jacksonville, Florida, where I had my lifelong friends and fellow rescue swimmers. And that's where I did that rescue.
Yeah.
1988.
Yep. We'll definitely get to that. It's just an amazing story. Can't wait to get to that. But before we get there, so you covered how you decided to go SAR. A lot of people nowadays, even when I went in, I had it guaranteed. I had to wait until February of 93, even though I graduated in 92, to get that program. And then we had like the dive motivator through boot camp, where we were training with the SEALs and divers, EOD, SWIC, all those guys, and holding bricks above our head and everything. And then you got out and you're a little more prepared, but then, you go to air crew and it's just Disneyland, right? You're doing helo dunkers and all kinds of fun stuff. It's like the coolest training probably did my entire time. But you went in 86. This was pre-Marecki. So Sharks and Daisies, like, it was pretty hardcore. I mean, it still is, but the things were kind of at that point where they needed to change. Like, what was your experience in SAR school? Like, what do you remember about it?
So, we started probably with the class of 25, 30. I think we graduated maybe eight or nine, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
The hard part about that was, the instructors were very, very tough. The unfortunate piece, my instructors were the ones that actually killed,
Oh,
accidentally
Marecki.
killed Marecki.
Yeah.
So back then it was instructor on students.
Yeah.
And if they had you in a death grip, you better learn, like you said, the front head hold release, the rear head hold release, all
Mhm.
of your pressure points to save yourself and the person that they were doing as a free floater or pilot or whatever. So it was very, very difficult back then. And I like to think it's still difficult. When I visited there just a few months ago, they only had one person in the class. So it's
Yeah.
still, it doesn't matter if it's instructor on student or student on student,
Mhm.
it is still very demanding. So the instructors were relentless. It didn't matter what class. I would see the other classes going through when I was in aircrew school, and it didn't matter who the instructor was or what class you were. Alpha Bravo Charlie. I was a Charlie team.
Mhm.
It didn't matter. It was still very, very grueling. Yeah, as you know, a lot of PT, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, cross-country running, beach runs, swims. So it wound up being the thing that I love the most is that camaraderie that we have as a class and jogging
Mhm.
together and motivating each other to get the job done, to graduate as a class. The unfortunate piece is sometimes people don't pass their final scenario
Mhm.
or they just drop on request a DOR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not for everyone, and I mean, it's hard for a reason. I think it was just hard. I don't know, it was kind of wrongfully hard, maybe in the past of what they were trying to pump through. The people that I talk to now that are running the school, they've revamped it so much. It's night and day from when you went. I was right at the other side of the Marecki incident, and then what it is today. It's like it's so different, but it's at the core, it's all the same. It's about remaining calm in the chaos. It's about saving lives. It's about putting, life over limb, and it's the ultimate form of serving others. I mean, you're jumping from that amazing helicopter, and now it's one to one to many, and the instructors know that. I mean, they can't. It's got to be tough, and you have the other perspective of that, which you can talk about as well. But when you're signing off on those students, those candidates, that's a big deal. Like, you don't want to put someone out there that's going to be, a risk to themselves and to others. And,
Correct.
there are no sides of the pool in the middle of the ocean. So, it's difficult. Yeah.
It's funny when you say that because when I became a SAR instructor, I used to use that line. There are no sides in the ocean, get off the side of my pool.
Hmm.
But you got to be tough. And we were tough even in 93 when I was an instructor in Jacksonville, Florida. You had to be tough on the students, whether it's the PT portion or the water portion, because people's lives are at stake. And
Hmm.
this is not a joke. I mean, yeah, being a lifeguard was, fun and all, and you get to twirl your whistle. But, when you're in that helicopter and you get that call, you have to have trust, and your crewmen have to have trust in you that you can jump from that helicopter, save a pilot, save a free floater, save a man overboard,
Hmm.
and maybe multiple people, no matter what the situation is, whether it's cold, hot, sea snakes, as I read in your book. Amazing.
Hmm.
There's sharks, there's uh, so many things that going on. Talking about a tanker, and then a tanker is coming towards the rescue swimmer,
Hmm.
and you think he's going to die, and they have to dive under with the rescue with the
Yeah.
survivor.
Yeah.
It's amazing just seeing that and hearing all that. So you've got to have trust. The bottom line. When we say we're air crew, you are a crew. You are a team. You have two pilots and two crewmen, and you're with them night and day, 70. Just through the thick and thin of things. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's best job in the world. Yeah, I think anyone who goes through it, they would agree because we're all biased. But I mean, it really is.
It
There's so
really
much
is.
that we had to know in that job, and it pushes you so far beyond your limits that I think most people that go into it, you have a baseline of what suck is,
Right.
and you get so far beyond that, but that creates confidence, not arrogance. It's just now you're able to be calm and maintain that composure. Even in like high altitude mountaineering, which I've done a little bit of, it's a lot of people can get lucky and make it to the summit. It's when stuff hits the fan, when there's an avalanche, when there's someone falls into a crevasse, like, are you going to have that awareness and willingness to create an anchor system to get those people out while maintaining your own rope team? Like it just takes a different, I think, breed of person. And
Yeah.
you never truly know if you are that person until you attempt it. And if you fail, that's okay. You learn from
Yeah.
it, you move on, you do something else in life.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I always feel sorry for people that just play it so ultra safe in life and just truly never know what life is.
True. Yeah. For my thing, it was, you're trusting your friends. You trust when you graduate. It's one of the best feelings in your life, right? You're graduating, knowing that we started with a class of 30 or so, 20 something plus. And you're down to that core people. And I still talk to two people in my class, Olin Husky and Matthias Russ. I'll give them a shout out. And they
Mhm.
were in my class, 8620. And it's amazing that we stay friends via Facebook and other venues.
Mhm.
It's been going on 38, 39 years. So
Yeah.
it's a small tight group. It's because we train together, lining up, doing your inspections and we all know how it was. You have that one little Irish pennant, and you're going to pay for that little Irish pennant. As
Mhm.
people are thinking, what's that? It's just a piece of thread. A piece of thread is that attention to detail that we didn't understand. Well, it's just a piece of thread. It was attention to detail that they tell you at SAR school. If you don't have the attention to detail, you can't do this job.
Yeah. Do you still have that attention to detail?
I still have that attention to detail in everything I do. Working at the Pentagon, you got to have attention to detail, So, and
Yep. A lot of accountability.
a lot of accountability, especially being, I've been in war zones in Afghanistan and
Mhm.
Iraq and everything else. So, without attention to detail, working with my crew, with my team, they don't trust you. But luckily, I've been trusted um, to support and defend the Constitution still as a civilian. So I appreciate that greatly in supporting America and keeping America safe.
Yeah, no, we all appreciate it. You're definitely a gift to this country. I like to think that I have good attention to detail as well, but my wife would say otherwise. She'd be like, it's right in front of your face, and maybe I just let my guard down when she's around, or I don't know. Maybe I
Yeah,
don't.
it's
So
yeah. She
it's
asked me a
all.
question. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. What? Yeah, I got to concentrate.
Yeah, such is life, right?
Yeah.
So you were a SAR instructor in '93,
Hmm.
but in Jax?
Yeah, but in Jax, it was the boat rescue swimmer school.
Oh, okay.
And what we did, we also did the CAT 2. So anybody returning to the fleet that's been out of the SAR community for a little while. So, or maybe they were doing a shore duty. You know how we did sea duty, shore duty, sea duty,
Hmm.
shore duty. So if they were on shore duty for an amount of time and they're going back to sea, they had to requalify as as a rescue swimmer again. So I handled the category 2, as we call them, to go back to the fleet, fully trained up again. So they had to do all the tests, all the releases. They didn't have to go through SAR school again. It was about a week long instead of the grueling
Refresher.
weeks. It was just a refresher. It was just enough for them to make sure that they could do, take a pilot with all the shroud lines around them, take the shroud lines off,
Hmm.
kick, make sure that they're safe, go up the helicopter, jump out of the helicopter again. And it was a great experience to do that.
Yep. And you had to go back through SAR school in order to be an instructor, correct?
Yeah. So one of the issues they had is say, hey, you want to be a SAR instructor? And um, my first tour in HS7, I got lucky to become a Navy diver. So I went to dive school. based on, hey, you're going to be a water survival instructor. You survived in the ocean during your rescue. Would you like to be a water survival and teach air crew and pilots how to survive extended amounts of times like we've done?
Mhm.
So that was fun. But after that, we lost the billet, and I was told, hey, go back to the fleet or finish up your shore, which I wanted to do because I was going to college at the same time. So I really wanted to get my college degree. So luckily, I met a friend, Kenny Green. You're my buddy. You're my lifesaver. We met together in instructor school in Millington, Tennessee, and he knew I was a rescue swimmer. Also, he was going to be the lead instructor at the SAR school. So when my name popped up to be an instructor, he said, "Absolutely, I'll take him." And then you're thinking you're going straight to SAR school and be an instructor. No, now you got to go through SAR school
Not that easy.
again. No, not that easy. Nothing's easy. So you had to do the 1.5 mile run, the 2 mile run, the 3 mile run, all the swim tests, all the open ocean swims, which I never ever got over. That Pensacola Bay, no matter what time it was, there was jellyfish
Gosh.
everywhere.
Yep.
So that was grueling. But it was fun because I met a bunch of cadre people. And again, I still talk to people from my SAR school. Dave Cody, who was just in one of my photos, one of my Navy buddies. He was an instructor with me, and so it was just unbelievable to meet such great people that are so motivated to train the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't take it lightly. So you went from there, and what's crazy, because we didn't even know this until 2 hours ago, that we overlapped at the FRS over at the Fleet Replacement Squadron HS-10 in San Diego, because you were transitioning from H3s to the 60, and then I went through all my schooling, went to SEER, and then went out and I don't know if I was in front or behind, but yeah, we were there at the same time. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy when we just talked. We're like, wait a minute, we were there at the same time. Yes, so we probably were in the same barracks. We probably, you probably flew after me. I flew after you. Probably did a, hot crew switch. Where hot pump crew switch, where I just get on and say, hey, okay, everything's good in the aircraft, and ICS and just hook it up. Who knows? You're right. I mean, it's just nuts how that worked out. And but it's fun when we started talking about that, how natural it became to go, wow, how lives just intertwine.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing part, because when you wrote this book, it's an amazing story, it's everything else. And then I find out that you're at the RAG, as we call it, in '94, and I'm like, I was there in '94. So it's amazing. It really is
hilarious. It'd be neat to see like a heat map of like how close we interacted, and
exactly.
And you were you had some special duties while you were there, right? Because you came from the fleet,
Right.
so you were doing what?
Yeah, I was doing some special duties. I was also teaching a lifeguard course, American Red Cross, and that's where I think maybe we may have met each other. And you may have my Red Cross with. No, don't.
I found it.
Is my name on there?
It is.
Oh my God.
Oh, for all the listeners that you're not watching the video. So when we went through, so Larry was lifeguard qualified, and he made us all not even lifeguard certified. It was like lifeguard trainers, because we are the lifeguards of the Navy, so, but I actually found it, 1994.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. And it says Larry Grossman on the back. Had no idea. So you're making money on us. And
I was making money on you guys. It was easy because you're rescue swimmers. I'm like, I don't have to put you through these tests. The American Red Cross trusts me to make you Omni Domini. So this is what's beautiful, that you actually found it with my name on it. So we did intertwine 30 years later on how we come together. That's why I say it's such a small. First off, the world is small. Yeah. The Navy is smaller, and the rescue swimmer cadre is even smaller. So I'm so glad that you found it. It is such an amazing thing that you kept it after all these years.
Yeah, no, it's laminated and everything. I'm going to use it. I'm going to get a job. Do these things expire?
I think they expire every 5 years, yeah. Unless there's no expiration on it. So, yeah. So
there isn't one, but it does say 94. So. That's
That is amazing. I love it. I love hearing that and seeing that. That's amazing.
it's too funny.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, you've done so much, and we can kind of get to that. But let's spend some time and talk about the rescue. So this is when I was doing research for Calm in the Chaos, the book. Everyone just it came back to you. There was a handful of like, you got to talk to these people, but yours was just bubbled up. And when I first talked to you and just got to know you, and just it's almost you're in this new this next phase of your life, and it kind of unlocked it for you as well, I believe, to just talk in that amount of detail, which I appreciated. And you were in Thailand at the time, right?
Right. I was in Thailand. Yeah. I was
Yeah,
in
so we were.
quarantine. Yeah.
Yep. So I don't know if I was up late or you were, but we were talking, and I'm just writing notes like crazy, trying to be as accurate as possible to capture this, because I got to retell your story. Fortunately, I shared it with you a few times, and you were able to do a little back and forth for accuracy. But um, when you're writing a book, it's like, especially a book like this, where I had like 30 different interviews and all these different stories, and I was very clinical, and the information that I was trying to share, because the whole point was to help others remain calm in the chaos based on panicking in their personal lives. But when you're writing a book, it's tough to know like where to put what. And your story was just the cherry, like the finishing touch, because it is a accumulation of everything that we learned coming down in a worst case scenario, and you barely making it, doing everything beyond. I mean, it's if there's if if there is a picture of "So Others May Live," it should be you in that litter that you sent me, a picture of a litter. I'll overlay it on here, where you're out. You've reached way beyond exhaustion, and yeah, it's amazing. I get goosebumps talking about it anytime I read it, anytime I share it. Um, yeah, it's amazing. So I'm just turning out. No one wants to hear me talk. They want to hear you talk. So let's relive that story.
Well, thank you, Brian, for those kind words. First off, I just want to say this was such a team effort from my entire squadron of HS7. So shout out to everybody in HS7. I mean, from the crew, from the line rats to the mechanics to make sure that the six birds were up. I mean, if something was broke, they fixed it immediately. So this was a major catastrophe. So complete shout out to the entire squadron, because without them, I could not have done my job. And, it's just an amazing how one squadron, later on we won the Battle E. We got the Meritorious Unit Commendation because of that. And it's because it was a true teamwork effort from the crew, from the line deck. I mean, the air boss was amazing, making sure that the aircraft were getting up. So I can tell you that when it happened, we're all swimming around. And days before, as we're doing training on the submarine, acoustic training, anti-submarine warfare training, it's a beautiful day. It's Jacksonville, Florida, off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, about 80 miles or so. And the weather, the sea temperature was about 78, 77 degrees. And so what's nice about that is we've all flown in atrocious weather where it's so cold and the water temperature so bad, you have to wear full wetsuit or a Gumby suit or a dry suit. Later on, they became dry suits, for us. And this was nice because I just had to wear a nice shorty top, wear some shorts and sit in the cargo area, so it was beautiful doing that. But we all saw a bunch of hammerheads in that area. And we were always like, man, this is pretty rough. We don't want to go in there, but yeah, we wish we would. So you always say that to your friends. So it was late afternoon when we got the word that the Bonefish is on fire, and we were in the ready room, alert 30. Maybe I was down in the squadron room, in the rescue swimmer room.
For the people that don't know, what's the Bonefish?
Yeah, the Bonefish was USS Bonefish. It was a one of the last diesel submarines that America had for training, because now we use nuclear submarines. And so this submarine was still active from the 50s, and there was a crew that did a phenomenal job to save as many people as possible. To evacuate a submarine in minutes. We're talking that, unfortunately, 3 people died during that time frame. But this submarine was just catastrophic fire.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was seawater coming in through one of the compartments, created corrosion, but then arced against the batteries, and it just once the fire started, they had to emergency surface this thing. I think a couple died during the explosion. I think the details are in the book, but it is the worst case scenario if you're a submariner.
Worst case scenario if you're submarine. That's what everybody I've talked to, and I've told the story a couple times, and it was a couple of submariners there, or they like to say we're submariners, But they said, "Hey, this is our worst. We trained to fight for this. We want to make sure that we get a fire out immediately because you will die underwater." So luckily, they surfaced, and unfortunately, 3 people did pass away, and that's the unfortunate piece. But we're talking a total catastrophic scenario. And so when we finally launched, you could see the smoke bellowing in the horizon. And as we're taking off, going there, all you're just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then as we're flying, we hear rig for rescue. So I know, because when I got there was already an aircraft hovering over. And at this time, Admiral Wakewitz, who was our MO, he was lieutenant commander at the time, Admiral Wakewitz, was hovering over that submarine that could explode at any moment. And there was 2 crewmen on there at the time. I think it was AWAN AJ Lapkovich and AW1 Chapman, and they did a phenomenal job of lowering that hoist and plucking people out of the emergency hatches. And
is it a basket or what?
No basket. We didn't. It's funny, we talk about baskets, and the Coast Guard always flies with baskets. We never did. Every once in a while, we would see the basket, but we never took it. I don't know why.
Crazy, because the H3 you could put like 20 in there. Thing is huge.
Exactly. The thing is huge. And I want to say, they did a lot. I want to say they even they may have picked up 24 people. Not at the same time. They were airlift. Yeah. But by that time, low on fuel and everything else. And that's when life rafts were being thrown to them from the USS Carr. And so people, as you saw in some of those pictures that you have, they're on top of the submarine. So they have to get into the fuel-soaked water, the shark-infested waters. That's got to be a nightmare. Some of them were burnt, oil, can't breathe, in a shock. That story I just sent you from the actual person who was there, he's vomiting because he's so sick, and the waves are just going up and down. And
sea state was pretty intense.
Sea state was pretty intense, and then now he has to go into the raft, which makes it even more intense. So my job was to look for those life rafts, because once they hit the water, they're activated. You don't know who's in there or not. And I could see an arm waving. So you get the 3 taps, jump, and you're gone. So I jumped in the water. You like you said, it's that calm in the chaos. It was a war zone that I literally attributed. It looked like something I saw in the movies, that I can only envision that the smoke billowing, the submarine, the people screaming. It's literally something out of Saving Private Ryan. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And so when you get that tap, like you explain in the book, you first get that one tap to release your gunner's belt, and he's holding, that crewman is holding on to you. AW1 Chris Carnes, thank you, brother. He's holding on to me. And then 3 taps, and I look down, look around, and I jump in. And I give him the hand signal that I'm safe, and he goes, okay. He backs away. And like you said, they hover around 80 feet, 60 to 80 feet, and they pull back, right? So you're fighting that rotor wash. I remember just swimming 50 yards or so to that raft, because every time the helicopter kept getting near it kept blowing that raft away. So they had to really stay away.
Yeah.
Plus the sea state, and I don't know, I just boom, 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 just got there. And I remember popping my head in there and looking around. And, this is something we learned at SAR school. You have to be calm, like you said, calm in that chaos. It was, if I'm not calm and I'm excitable, then they're going to be excitable. So I have to calm the sailors down. And when I got there and I looked at them, there was about 24 in this life raft. And I remember looking at them, and I'm immediately assessing the situation. Who do I get first? And I said, give me your worst off right now. Yep. And this first guy was burned. He had oil on him. He was vomiting. He was in a shock. He was just a mess. And he would not get in the water. I found out later when I wrote an article in Approach magazine that never take for granted that somebody in the Navy actually knows how to swim. So, they would do a 3rd class or 2nd class swim call, which is just, back then, if you walked on the bottom of the concrete pool and you got to the other end, you would pass boot camp.
Right.
So, and they're hoping, I'm going submarines and I hope this never happens, but some of them just could not swim, and that's a sad fact. Mm-hmm. So when I got this guy, I said, you got to get in. He goes, no. And I don't have control, as we were taught in SAR school. You don't have control when the guy's in the raft or anywhere else. You have to get him in the water, where we've learned to do certain techniques to make sure we have control of that person. So without him knowing, I just grabbed him from behind, threw him in the water, thinking that would be the easy part. But it wasn't, because of his burns, his shock. He immediately went underwater, immediately went underwater. Even though I had control of him, he went under. And it was amazing. I had to go under and reach for him. So I went down 5-6 feet, finally got his hand, pulled him to the top. We both took a good deep breath, and I remember just grabbing him across the chest, and I said, I got you, don't worry. And then he spun around, knocked off my mask. And immediately I could see just, the first 6-8 inches of the seawater where that mask is doing this. And of course I can't grab it. Yep. So as I'm swimming with him, he is just freaking out the whole way. And I still have about 40 yards to swim with him to the helicopter. I said, okay, well, I got control. He's okay now. Once I took off my life preserver, even though it's my life preserver, I felt that his life was more important than mine at that moment. So I gave him my life preserver, inflated it. So it immediately calmed him down. He knew he was floating at that moment. And I said, I got you. Got fighting that rotor wash, grabbed him up to the hook. I'll never forget it. Hooked him up, made sure that rescue strap was around him, made sure the safety strap was on him also, because obviously you don't want him slipping out, and especially in that state that he was in. Yeah. And I just remember I gave the thumbs up for him to go up. And as he was being lifted up, he said, this part gets me every time. He said, thanks for saving my life. And so I looked at him, gave him a thumbs up, and then swam to the next guy. And I remember doing that same thing, going in, who's the worst? Who's your worst? Who's your worst? And after 8 times of going back and forth, the helicopter had to take off. It was pretty heavy at that moment. So you have 8 bodies. They take off. Another helicopter comes in. All right. So it was like an assembly line of vehicles just trying to get into things. And this was, okay, you got the next helicopter. They drop another rescue swimmer. And at this point, my buddy unfortunately just passed away, Brent Eckert. He was the next rescue swimmer in. And so, we're coordinating operations. So at one point, when they dropped them in, the raft just drifted way too much. And kind of right before they dropped them in, I had to signal to the helicopter, hey, you know, my little ICS, my radio did not work. Okay.
Yeah, those
They
suck
never
so bad.
do.
They'd electrocute you anyways.
Never worked. I'm trying to call him. I said, okay, maybe he could see my hand signal. So he's looking at me. I'm doing this, like this, just showing him, take me to that raft. So he hooks me up and they airlift me. Now I'm like airlifted to the raft.
Short hold.
Yeah, the short haul. And then, that's how it worked. And then they dropped the next rescue swimmer and, Brent Eckert. So at this moment, I would grab a guy. He would come from the hoist. He would hold the hoist and grab it. And then he would go to the raft. He'd grab a guy and then I'd hold it and I'd swim with the hoist halfway. And then, so it was a very good teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
At one point I saw him in there and he was just making jokes with the crew, keeping them nice and calm.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was a character, phenomenal. And so I said, hey man, just stay in here, keep him calm. I got it. And he goes, okay, you got it. After another 7 or so, in the other helicopter, another rescue swimmer came in, and AW3 Brian Gary. So he came in. Then we had another rescue swimmer, AW3 Brian Matheson. So we had 4 rescue swimmers at one point, but the helicopters had to take off. So they would get in and everything else. By the time, it's nightfall, my eyes are swollen. The burn is amazing. I don't know how long I've been in the water. I truly don't.
And remember, this whole time, you don't have a mask, so your eyes are not protected. You don't have a snorkel,
Right.
so breathing, is very difficult. You don't have your flotation. Not that you use it anyways, but it's always a good safety backup plan in case something hits the fan. So.
Exactly.
So this is intense.
And so as you see the nighttime, we have our mask and then we put a chem light in there so that the crew, the pilots, the air crewmen could see you in the water. That's why we do that. I couldn't do it because I didn't have a mask. So they have the spotlight on me. They're doing everything they can. And at one point everybody's out and I'm looking around. I don't know what's going on. I just remember the last survivor came in, and I want to say, I think one of the rescue swimmers popped one of the rafts because you want to make sure nobody else sees it later on, or it's one of those hazard to maritime ships. So and you don't want it where it floats way out to the ocean and somebody is launching a rescue helicopter out there, kind of thing. So pop the raft and everything else, and I just remember. I got to get it. And, everybody's safe. By then we had the USS Carr. They had people, they had motor whaleboats out and they're plucking people. They're doing everything that they do. I'm just focused on what my task was at hand. Mm-hmm. And that was to save these 24 lives. So at one point I just said, okay, I'm done. Everybody's safe. The rescue swimmers are safe on board. Everybody else safe, time to get me out of that water. And so I signaled the hoist. They came by. And I remember hooking myself up. And then as they lifted me out of the water, I completely passed out. And I think at one point I was with the last survivor. That was what it was, the last survivor and, kind of spinning around. Mm-hmm. Or I may have sent him up without me. I don't know why I did that because normally you always go up with the last survivor, but I think I sent him up and then I was spinning out of control. And by the time they got me in, because I remember the other rescue swimmer that was in there was in the helicopter. I just remember him giving me his helmet and putting on his flotation on me. And all I could hear the pilots were saying, okay, we're ready kind of thing. And then they said, rescue swimmers down, clear the flight deck. And I just passed out at that moment. And then all I remember is the sad part was, I don't remember how long the flight was. It could have been 5 minutes, could have been 30 minutes. I really don't know. I was out cold. I remember I'm in the stretcher, and in the picture that you have, there's one of the other Bonefish crewmen that was, that we just got done rescuing. So he looked, he's out of it. I'm out. You can see me. I'm just out, right? And they take me down to the mess decks, and we train for these things in general quarters, mass casualty drills, where the mess decks. And the mess decks are, our chow hall for everybody that knows. It's 5,000 men and women on a carrier, and you've got to eat somewhere. It's called the mess decks. And now everything that we've trained for in mass casualty drills, the mess decks is the mass casualty. And they were makeshift stretchers. They were makeshift beds. Yeah. And there was corpsmen, there was doctors, there was corpsmen for every squadron as we had. Just treating everybody. And I remember I'm looking aside and I'm looking at people to the left and to the right of me. I mean, we could barely see. And, people were getting eyes flushed, burn treatments. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm in the thick of things. And then the corpsmen and the doctors rushed to me. My corpsman, Doc Lee, I'm sure Doc Lee will hear this. So thanks, Doc Lee, for everything. And, he looks at my eyes. My gear had to be cut off because it was completely fuel saturated. So they had to take that away, which kind of sucks. At one point I was just trying to think about it. I don't even know what happened with my fins, but I thought during the rescue I was going to lose one of my fins because they weren't fitting properly. These super rocket fins that had zero dynamic to it. They were just big, clunky rubber,
Oh, heavy. And it was oil in the water, so it's like slick, and that would have been tough.
It's slick, and I kept remember just tightening my fin a lot, and I was like, oh, if I just lose a fin, now I lost my mask, my flotation and a fin. How am I going to do this? I would have just had to kick off the booties and just do it like a lifeguard, essentially, because they don't have it. But anyway, so the doc takes care of me, and they cut my gear off, and it was just destroyed. So it had to be, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand up. My body was completely taxed. 3 hours in the ocean, and I didn't know how many people I rescued. So I just remember that night, my crewman came in, AW1 Chris Carnes, and he comes in and he goes, hey, how you doing? He was such a jolly guy, such an amazing crewman. And everybody, all the rescue swimmers are coming in. They're like, hey, man, how are you? How you doing? And I was just like, oh, I'm okay, man. I'm okay. And then I had to spend the night in the medical ward. But at that moment, he told me, he said, do you know how many people you saved? And I said, I have no clue. Yeah. Literally no clue. And he said, well, you're credited with saving 19 lives. So that was pretty powerful, right? So, so I remember the next day, I finally get cleared by the doc. They're like, okay, you could go upstairs to your ready room. And I just remember just walking very slowly and just kind of like, you're still kind of proud, but I'm 21 years old. I'm just a young AW3. And I just remember getting into the ready room and, everyone's clapping. Yeah. So it was just an amazing time. And like I said, it was just, you don't know what you don't know, as you put it. You just don't know what your body can do until you put to that test. Yeah. And this was one of those things where I just did what I was taught. I knew I couldn't quit. My father taught me never say can't, never quit. And that gave me that attitude. Like, even during SAR school, when things were tough, I was like, I can't quit. I can't face my father. If I DOR,
Yep. Whatever motivation you got. But yeah,
whatever motivation I got.
it's
And,
not an option.
no, and my father was a New York detective. So it
Mhm.
was one of those where, this tough guy, and I just never wanted to let him down kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. And at this point, um, I attribute a lot to God watching over me.
Yeah.
He did, who knows what could have happened. I mean, this is such a catastrophe, and I could have maybe done one or two people or three people and then just passed out and died myself, but he gave me that strength to continue on. And again, my can't attitude, that I won't quit, never say can't. And it just, like I said, I did not know how long I was in the water. I just knew it was getting dark, and I didn't know how many people I actually saved. It was just so fast to me. And even right now, it's so vivid. I could still see people that I grabbed. Yeah.
How, yeah, it's just so incredible to hear it from you. I still get goosebumps, like hearing it from you, from even reading like in the book. Just that point of exhaustion. We have a swimmer down. Is I've never heard of that in any other situation. And if you peel back just the physiological side of it, um, the human body is not supposed to function the way you did. You pushed so far beyond that in all senses you shouldn't be alive today.
Right.
And then when we were talking earlier, you had also heard that because you were at sea level that entire time, it was kind of like almost a head rush of being hoisted out after everything your body just went through, all the trauma that you're dealing with. It's kind of like when you stand up too fast and you pass out. Well, this was, take that to, completely next level.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Like I said, it was like, you're being plucked out of the water, and now all the blood is being rushed to your body, and I just passed out. And the flight surgeons call it something. I think it's hydrostatic shock or something. But like you just pointed out eloquently, better than I could, that your body is so taxed, and you're at sea level, and you're in the water that long, and it's like standing up. You just stand up too fast, you lose that blood in your head.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm at sea level, everything's fine, and then I get pulled out, so now everything just rushes back down to the extremities, and just passed out.
Yeah.
And,
The only example I have of that would be that as opposite as you could possibly have, because it was on the summit of Everest and surviving my descent during my blind descent. But it was that adrenaline, whatever was keeping me going. And obviously, God, I had a miracle, and I shouldn't be here. From the opposite, you're at sea level, I'm up there. But when I finally reached my tent, I was out for like 15 hours. My eyes were glued shut. I'd lost 20 pounds in the ordeal. But whatever it took for both of us to stay alive and to do what we had to do to survive, in your case, help others survive, it's amazing. It's a testament of, our training, probably our mindset, mentality, and just the human, what humans are capable of if and hopefully no one has to go through like these things that we've went through, but it's good to know that they can. And it's awesome that you're on this side of it.
thank you. Yeah, when
What
you push your body, you just don't know what you can do. And now I attribute it to a lot of things. Just like I said, you never say can't. You push your body. We've all gone through the same special operations training. Everybody is trained at the same level. Some people are faster runners. Some people are better swimmers. But when it comes down to it, you all graduate doing the same thing. So whether
Mhm.
you're faster or stronger, but everybody, even the weaker person, still has to go through that final scenario. There's no like, well, you don't worry about it. No, we all do that final
Mhm.
scenario, like you talked about in the book. That we have three people in our final scenario, which is a lot. You have 30, 40 minutes or an hour, whatever they gave us. You have a pilot, you have somebody in a raft and you have a free floater, and you have to assess the calm. You have to look around and go, who is my worst off? Is it the pilot in the raft? Nah, he's probably okay. Is it the pilot that has shroud lines wrapped around him, which we know that the chute can take him down?
Mhm.
Or is it that free floater who's face first in the water? So now you have to decide whose life you save first.
Oh.
And that was the, that was one of my choices. I looked around and I said, give me your worst off. And there was a petty officer in charge of the boat, essentially. They did a muster inside and he said, okay, okay. And I went up to him. He was an E5. I could still see his face. I said, give me your worst off. And he told me this guy is the worst off. And as he was approaching, he was sitting in the back and the raft was doing this and he is just vomiting everywhere. And I just looked at him and I was like, okay, Larry, keep that poker face. He's burned. Mm-hmm. He's got oil all over him. He's got soot around his mouth. He's just, and he was just shaking the whole time. And it was, it's that calm that I said, okay, let me do it. And that's why I say that hard training is so important, whether you're a SEAL, a diver. I don't care if you're anything else in the Navy. Your training is so important. Mm-hmm. And that's why I said it was literally a team effort. In the picture, you'll have, docs, they're wearing the white shirt, but we also had some green shirts carrying the stretchers along. And one of them was our admin guy. So we had admin people who don't even do anything except, the administrative part of the squadron, helping out with this rescue. Yeah, so that's why I say it's a complete team effort for HS7, and my hat's off to HS7 of 1988.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. So this is years later, and that's a lot of trauma to go through. A lot of times your experience is probably like mine. You don't want to be labeled as, having any issues because you don't want to be down. But it's a traumatic event. Just what you went through personally, having to recover from all that, the emotional side of it, but there was loss that occurred. There was, it was just total chaos. How have you been able to cope with all that?
Yeah, it was tough. It's still tough to this day. When people talk about it, they're like, oh, well, without you, 19 people wouldn't have had their families. And, there's a lot of things that's a burden on me. I mean, whether, it's a complete burden that I think about because, these guys are now grandfathers and they have, it's something because they went through something so catastrophic themselves. And how do you cope with that? Some days you just think about it. And, every time I hear a helicopter, I mean, we're all men. We look up and,
go run outside.
We run outside and, I can go, oh, and I'm near the Pentagon. I'm at the Pentagon. So the president's bird flies all the time, which is an H-3. So I know that sound, and when I see it, I just, it just takes me back to my great squadron buddies, to that day of just unbelievable chaos, and what we did was phenomenal. Like I said, as a squadron, what we did, not just one person, not just one crew, it was all 6 birds are flying. Mm-hmm. So we're talking 24 pilots and air crew together. We all lined up when we got our medals, and we all got the same at the time. It was all Navy Commendation medals, Navy Commendation, heroic action, blah blah blah. And it was well earned for everybody. Whether like I said, they were co-pilot, whether they're the first crewman. And we all aspire to be that first crewman who can lower you down and take charge of that back. Because once that helicopter gives you control of that rescue, you are it. Yeah. So we all aspired to be that. And of course, we all did become first crewmen and everything else. But yeah, it's just an amazing day. But, we didn't do it for the awards. And I like to think that when we got it, we were all just very proud of each other. It's just an amazing day. Yeah.
That's neat. I like what you said as far as it was, well, I don't like, I guess, but whatever. It's interesting that you say it's a burden, and that comes from one, humility, and also survivor's guilt. Because when it's a lot to put on you because you're just you, right? And I
Right.
know everyone listening, and I know you, and you're amazing, all that stuff. But you don't feel that way about yourself because you are you. You're human. You're just doing your job.
Right.
And these people are all alive because of you. There's multiple generations that continue in that chain because you were there and you did your job. You went back to your training, and I would say you went well beyond your job. Um, that's who you are.
Thank you, Brian.
You would die to save another life, and you showed it
Mhm.
there. If you had to do it again, is there anything you would do different?
I think what I would have done differently is I can't say that it was my fault. My mask fell out of the down to the bottom of the Atlantic, which will be found, 2,000 years from now, with
Hmm.
my initials carved in it.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it'll be cool. It'll be like the Dead Sea Scrolls. Somebody will find us. What's this LG?
Yep.
It must mean something important. It's funny because when we say check our gear, you got to check your gear. And we did tie. This was nothing new, where you're supposed to tie a shroud line to your
Hmm.
mask. And I don't think I checked my gear personally that day. And the knot may have been a bad knot or whatever on my part, because I
Yeah.
can't blame it on the PRs. If you listen, PRs, it was not your fault. It's probably my fault. But I would have done that. I would obviously, when you're in the thick of things and oh my God, go, 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 you're rigged for rescue. I'm not checking those knots. I should have done that way before, especially during my alerts or anything else. I should have just making sure I got my chem lights, I got my flares, I got my knife, I got everything else. And the unfortunate piece is, I lost my harness because of it was soaked in fuel. It would have been nice to have that as a memento. But back then we didn't have internet, we didn't have camera phones, we had cameras from the aircraft.
Hmm.
I probably wish I had maybe one of those little or disposable 110s. It would have been nice to always carry in case of an emergency. But you don't think of those things. You just think that, okay, I'm going to go on my life, I'm going to go on my crew, and then all of a sudden this thing happens. So I don't think I would have done anything different. I think I still would have stayed in the if it was today, I'd still stay in the water for 3 hours, making sure everybody was safe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't quit,
Yep.
even to this day. Yeah.
Yep. I believe you. I think, yeah, I think most in that situation would probably do the same. And those that have no clue about what it's like to do that think it's probably crazy. They admire us for what we do. Um, but it's just one of those things when you're in the moment, I don't know, you can't question it. And you did it. People are alive. So amazing story. Thank you for sharing
No,
it. You can
no,
tell
thank
it's
you.
definitely still
And
emotional.
yeah, it's emotional, and I could see it. I could still feel it. It's one of those things you're just like, ah.
Can you smell it?
And yeah, I could smell it. Every time I smell JP5, every time I smell fuel, it just takes you, it's just that little thing. It's not a bad
Mhm.
trigger that I have, because I can cope with it. But, to this day, if I'm on a flight line and I smell JP5, it brings a smile to my face, actually, because I'm like, JP5. And I'm looking behind you of you jumping out of that H3. And it's amazing. It's just such a unbelievable thing that I'm looking at right there, that you're jumping out, and that's as you said, it's your first jump ever.
Mhm.
And that takes me back to my first jump ever. And back then, we jumped in, I think it was an H1. They gave us a Huey to jump out of.
Wow, cool.
Um, and that first time you hit that water, whether it's a 10 and 10, right, in
Mhm.
quotations, a 15-foot hover or whatever. But I was just with one of my pilot buddies, Mike Kashanik, and we were talking about the He's like, yeah, sure, 10 and 10, sure, 20 and 20. It was more like it, or 30 and 40. 30
50 and
feet.
0.
Yeah, 50 and 0. Yeah, those hurt. Yeah.
I
So
shattered
yeah.
my mask doing too high, but I was also doing flips. So
Oh,
I came up, it was completely gone. I cleared it underwater and it was very clear because there was no glass. I
uh,
look up and Buddy jumps next to me and he's like, holy crap, it's just shredded, just blood. I'm like,
oh.
uh-oh.
And that's having fun. You're with your buddies, and I remember jumping in Yokosuka Bay, and it was like 30 degrees outside. The water temperature probably 25.
Yeah.
My buddy D Orton, I know he's going to listen.
Oh, yeah.
He convinced me. Oh, you know D, yeah,
Mhm.
and he convinced me to wear almost nothing, just like a shorty top or something. And we blacked our
It's
faces
a good
out.
friend.
Yeah, it's a good face. We had fun. I was like, yeah, I could handle it, but that water was cold. And
Yeah.
I have a picture of me and him together, and he's smiling, and I'm just like, yeah,
This is great. Yeah, that's why I got paid the big bucks.
that's right. We got paid $100 a month to jump out of a
Yeah,
helicopter.
hazardous pay. So, like I mentioned earlier, our job is the ultimate form of serving others. And I know well, one, you transitioned into an officer role. We can talk about that just briefly, and then just kind of where
Yeah,
you're at and how you're serving today.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so after 11 years of being a rescue swimmer, I was an E5. Taking the E6 exam quite a few times. The old standard of pass but not advanced, the P&A.
Yep.
It's so disheartening when they say, congratulations, you passed the test, but we are not advancing you. You don't have enough time in rate, or you don't have enough time as in grade. So, people listening, if you don't have enough time as the AW, as your rating, they ding you on points. If you don't have enough time as great as an E5, like I only had at the time 3 years, and then it's 4 years, and it's 5 years, and 6 years. I made E5 from E1 to E5 in less than 3 years. So in my head, I'm thinking I'm going to be E6 and 8. I'm going to be an
Hmm.
E7 and 9. No, I stayed in E5 for 8 years.
Oh, well.
So it
Yeah,
was
frustrating.
disheartening. Yeah, it's very frustrating. It's because our rate was very locked. It was one of
Hmm.
the, as you know, it's a coveted rate. We're walking around in flight suits. Who doesn't want to do that all day, right?
Hmm.
So at that time, I was working on my college degree late at night, and my kids were very, very young at this time. Stephanie, Josh, and Lauren, love you. They were very young, so I was delivering pizza at night to pay for my college books. And so I knew that I wanted to be an officer from day one. And I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew I was going to do everything I could. So um, after applying for OCS, and because now I had my degree, once you have your degree, there's only one avenue. It's OCS. If you don't have your degree, you can go uh, uh, the enlisted commissioning program. You can go the boost program. You can go to the Naval Academy. You can go, all the ROTC. You
Warrant
could do
officer.
warrant officer. You could go all these routes, but when you have your degree, there's only one, and that was OCS.
Hmm.
And I was not a first class, so I couldn't apply for the LDO program. So, once I became an officer, I tried 7 times. It was that, like I said, my father taught me to never say can't. And every time I got denied, I would apply again and apply again and apply again. And finally, when I got denied the last time, I said, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to call. Now I was applying for EOD and diver. And my last try, I tried intelligence.
Hmm.
And so back then you had to put your package in through the intelligence detailer or diving detailer or whomever. And I just remember I go, well, I got nothing to lose. I'm an E5. What are they going to do? Make me an E5? I'm already an E5. So I called them up and I said, hey, sir, did you look at my package by any chance? And he goes, well, to be honest, I didn't read the whole thing. I skimmed through it. And because your commanding officer was only an O5, I didn't give it enough weight. And he goes, we got people that have admiral, endorsements or captain endorsements. You only have an O5. I said, so you're dinging me for my squadron because our squadron is O5s. I said, you know that in the Navy, that an O5 has so much power and that he's commanding, 200-300 people.
Yeah.
So, and I told him, stop dinging me. I said, if you read my package with a cup of coffee, I guarantee you will select me. And he goes, you know what? No one's ever talked to me that way before. And I was like, well, listen, please, all I'm asking is a fair chance. If you read it, I put a lot of effort into this.
Yeah.
And then he called me back a couple hours later, and this is through the squadron phone. And he said, wow, what an amazing package. He goes, I'll give you my answer in a little bit. And so I waited. He didn't give me an answer. It may have been a 4-day weekend, I'm going, I won't get it. He's just giving me lip service. And then he sent out an official message to my skipper saying, congratulations, AW2 Grossman's going to Officer Candidate School. So I had nothing to lose, and I became an officer. And then 11 years later, I was an intel officer. And not because I'm good or anything, but, I was also an intel officer of the year.
Not that I'm a badass or anything,
Yeah,
but I kind of, you are.
I'm kind of a big deal,
Right.
So, so it was nice that he followed my career, and he knew, and he found that out, and he called me when I got that award. And he said, I knew I picked the right guy. I said, yeah, all I asked for a chance. So I took that mentality when I helped enlisted people become an officer. And I really put a lot of effort into them, because they would see me as an ensign walking around with, a lot of ribbons and everything else. And they're like, sir, you're prior enlisted, they can see my pride possession is my good conduct medal, because that identified me as enlisted, and I it was proud, because people can go, oh, he was prior enlisted. So I would mentor these young enlisted guys too. And I say, this is how you do it. Let me put your package together. And I would get people to go, to get to OCS, because I took that time. And I learned that because this one officer took the time. I had some great mentors, great officers, great first classes that really mentored me. I never was in trouble. So I attribute that to my Navy career, and I've taken that when I retired and I became an officer with the Pentagon. I'm a GS-15 now, and my door is always open. Anybody can literally tell you, when Larry says his door is open, and he means it. I will stop what I'm doing, because what they have is more important than what I'm doing. I could be doing something for the SecDef or anything else, but if a young officer comes in my office and they need assistance, I stop what I'm doing and I say, okay, I can help you. And usually it's a very quick, if they say, hey, you got 5-10 minutes, I'll say, okay, let me finish this, please come back. But my door is always open, because I believed in such great mentorship that I got from these E6s and E5s in the Navy, that literally they take you under their wing, right? To make sure that you are being the best, because they're grooming the next generation. I'm the next generation. And then it's so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah. And you were talking about Master Chief Hoffman. And he said, when you asked him, who do I talk to? And he said, you got to talk to Larry Grossman. And like I said, I served with him when he was an E4. And then I had the honor to re-enlist him in a helicopter, him and Jerry Lombardo. So it's a small world. And so I always feel that I'm always going to give back to the community. I'm going to give back to my country. And I continue deploying to war zones. I continue serving as a military attaché under military affairs. And I've served all over the world, and I will continue to do so until I can't breathe anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what's amazing is you're not doing it to get anything back. Like, everything you're doing is just unconditional. And that's so unusual in this world. And if you can model that and others can take that and learn from it and replicate that, I mean, you could just have this ripple effect, which I believe you have. And it's an honor to be able to have you as a friend, because we need people like you in this world. Have you done any cliffside rescues?
No, never did.
Perfect. let's see how you do on one. Okay. So Larry, so let's take it down a notch. We've been pretty intense, pretty serious here. So this is something we do. It's kind of like a 1 minute scenario, hypothetical scenario. Just in the whole reason, I'll give you the scenario, and then you just tell me, like, as you're launched, you're flying towards, this tragedy, what's going through your head?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So the scenario, because I have like a lot of scenarios written down here, typed out, and I feel like in real life you've done most of them. So I know you haven't had a nighttime cliffside rescue.
Right.
So let's see what you got.
All right,
Okay.
let's do it.
All right, let's do it. The scenario: hikers are stranded on a sea cliff after an unexpected storm. The only access is by water and air, with jagged rocks and crashing waves at the base of the cliff. Now launch the Alert 30 Helo.
Okay,
You're the swimmer.
I'm the swimmer. Got it. Okay, we're going through. How far away are we?
I don't know. That's all the
Okay.
information I got too.
Okay.
So you can ask these questions. So I need to know if
That's
or
great.
how.
Okay. So, we get the word that there's three stranded people on a jagged cliff. It's stormy. It could be, so we're looking at a lot of issues, probably scared people. Hopefully the cliff is not, that it's easier, because we've all done SAR where we could land on one spot, one tire
Mhm.
kind of thing. So I would have to think at this moment, if they're on a cliff, that I can't land and get them. So I'm going to assume that maybe I have the old force penetrator, or if I would come down in a basket, if we carried a basket, I would put them in a basket. But the problem is, if the basket is hovering and they try to launch in, the basket is going to flip away. So you got to be careful about that. So I would probably come down in the rescue strap. And at that moment, because I have a harness, I would come down on my D ring and not on the rescue strap, but the rescue strap would be around. I'd come down to them. I would grab them with my legs. I would put the rescue strap around them. My D ring is still attached to the big hook, and I would put the rescue strap around them, hook it in there, and put their safety strap on them and take them one at a time.
How how long's it been since you have been a rescue swimmer?
Uh, so it's 1997.
Not crazy.
Yeah.
Like you can still, over 20, what is that? Close to 30 years later. I mean, you can still, I mean, the harness is like everything's changed now. It's all integrated system and, different helicopters and different
Right.
abilities. But based on the time that you are in, I mean, it's almost like you're still in. Like you can still just pop to that mindset of what you would do in that
Right.
scenario. And obviously, one of the appeals of our job is, or the job we had is, you never truly know what you're going in. You never know what you're going to face, right? So in your mind, you're mapping it all out. And then once you get there, all of that pre-assessment comes together and then you can fine tune as opposed to not thinking about it at all. And then you get there and it's total just chaos in your mind. You already have an idea. You get in there. Um, Maybe a basket, maybe a penetrator is the way to go. But for a cliffside rescue, going down on a strop, doing one at a time might be the thing. I mean, but again, you don't know until you're there. Till you go down, you're trying to do one. There's three people, and they all dive on top of you. Now what do you
Right.
do? So you
Yeah.
just never know. But no, that was impressive. Just the fact that you were able to just go there as if 30 years ago you're still in. It's wild.
Yeah, you try to visualize everything, and I could actually picture the cliff, and there's three people, and I would say, okay, if it was father, mother, son, daughter, some kind of scenario, a child, I'd take the child first because I'm sure that they would want that child safe. If it was three men, then you'd have to say, okay, who do you want to go first? You'd have to assess the situation.
Mhm.
Like I said, that calm before that chaos. You have to literally go, okay, I'm taking you. And then they're, wait, you don't want three people jumping on you, right? Because
No.
and hopefully they would understand that by the time you come down and it's so loud, so
Yeah.
they're scared. You're blowing all this air on them, whether it's raining and whatever the scenario, snow, there's so many things that I could
Yeah.
picture. In this one.
Cliffside too, rocky, jagged. So it's, the rotor wash is just so intense. It's all the
Right.
debris. It's a tough scenario, and at night. So
Yeah, and at night, you got night vision goggles on. So if the cliff was okay, we would land on one side and hover, and we've done that in SAR, and then I'd grab them all and stuff like that. So there's just without knowing the unknown, but you come up to a scenario, you just have to, boom, that's whatever works, whatever if you don't have, we didn't really fly with force penetrators, and we didn't really fly with especially on plane guards, we don't need a force penetrator, and we really didn't fly with baskets, especially in the H-60 once we transferred over to the H-60.
Yeah. Not enough room, especially the Foxtrot, because you got a sonar sitting there.
No, and by the way, I love that you actually have that lifeguard card that I signed, and that's how we met in 1994. It is amazing to me, and it's such a funny thing that how we were talking and how we intertwined. I said, well, I did the lifeguard thing. You're like, I remember that. And I'm like, uh-oh. And you said, I'm going to look for my card, and you have my name on it. That is just amazing to me.
I
It
know,
really is.
it's so funny. I searched for this too, and I don't know why I still have it, but I'm
That's
never
amazing.
gonna toss it.
No, thank you.
I'm gonna put this up in my shadow box, because this is now a part of my military experience.
That is such a great story. No, thank you, Brian. I do appreciate everything. And like you said, your book is phenomenal. Your first book, when you sent it to me and you autographed it, it was an amazing story to hear what you did and your faith in God, your faith in your family, and how you heard your wife's voices and get up to continue going. It's an amazing story. It really, truly is. And that's like you said, it's a testament. You don't know what your body will go through. And here you have no goggles, you're blind descent coming down the highest mountain in the world. And my hat's off to you too. I mean, I wish you nothing but the best success in all of your endeavors in this book. I know you're doing a lot of book signings. I will do anything I can for you to promote your book. And it's an honor that you included me in your book. It truly is. And I'm glad. Thank you for wrapping me up in the final chapter of Calming the Chaos. Thank you so much.
No, it's just amazing to have you there. And to wrap the book up, I mean, I can't think of it another way. There's so many incredible stories, but that just did it all. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes, and if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.